Hello and Happy New Year. Welcome to 2026. This is the first Restore Liberty podcast for the year, and we have a very special guest, Donovan O'Neil from Americans for Prosperity.
George, always a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming here at the beginning of the year. I thought it would be a real interesting take to try and, step back. A lot of stuff happened at the end of the year. We were just talking about the shutdown, but, this is going to be a big year for America. We have to decide, what do we want to do in the midterms? And in Ohio, we have a huge choice with Vivek running for governor. I think that's a huge opportunity. But just sort of to kick things off, what is your overall pessimism, optimism for the nation in 2026?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm pessimistic. I wouldn't say I'm optimistic. I think we're somewhere in the middle, right? It's a sobering reality. We have an opportunity to go backwards from where we are today, right? Where we're going to embrace top-down solutions, where we are going to take a scarcity approach rather than an abundance approach to energy policy. We're going to have a belief that Washington or Columbus knows better how to spend your money than you do.
Which has never worked.
That's what we can go back to, or we can continue forward in a way, right? Where we're focused on secure borders in our country for once in a generation, right? We're focused on safe communities where we're limiting crime and we're empowering people to thrive. And we can focus on a stronger economy. The kinds of policies that we got done in the working families tax cut last summer.
Right.
Americans, Ohioans are going to begin to feel that as they're filing their taxes. Nobody likes filing their taxes, but this April is going to be better than a lot of Aprils for folks because of the work that's been done this past 12 months. It's not over though, right?
Part of the problem is it would have been so much worse if the big, beautiful bill hadn't passed. So nobody knows that, hey, you were looking at a 20% federal tax increase for most Americans if that hadn't passed. But it did. So now what you're seeing is better, but you didn't even know how bad it was.
Well, your listeners and viewers, the folks at Restore Liberty would know that, George. But yeah, for most Americans, they're detached from this, right? They're only catching it in snippets and bites. But what matters here, right, is we're saving Americans, average Ohioan is saving $1,500 on their tax bill because of the actions your congressmen, your senators made voting for that bill last year.
So the other thing, like you mentioned, was the border security. I think part of the problem there is Trump solved it too fast. So people were already forgotten that, hey, it was 10,000, 100,000, 200,000 people a month. It's zero now.
Wild.
He did it in months, not years, and he didn't need any congressional help. He just did it. So getting people to remember how bad it would have been, certainly a Kamala Harris regime right now, we would be looking at $4, $5 gasoline. The cities would be overrun with migrants even more than they are now. Clearly with what's going on in Minnesota with the Somalians, and Springfield, Ohio still has their issues. Columbus, Ohio has a Somalian problem. So I think it's getting better, but reminding people in the midterm elections that, this is where we are and how much better it looks is going to be tough.
Well, there are a couple things that I'm a limited government conservative, but there are a couple things that you look to the federal government to do. One chief among them is securing our borders, securing our nation. I think that's what we've got to go out there and talk to our friends and neighbors about this year in terms of those federal elections, those races, and what's at stake in November. And then at the state level, right, it's talking about the kind of policies that make states competitive. It just came out today as we're recording this, U-Haul's annual report of the 10 most departed states and the 10 most moved to states. Ohio's among the bottom 10. And
meaning people are moving out.
Moving out. Where are they moving to? Zero income tax states, states with low regulatory burdens, states with maximum school choice and education opportunity, and states that are, some folks won't like to hear it, but a right to work that empower worker freedom. Ohio's been doing a lot of really good stuff over the last couple of years, and our activists, our team has been a part of that, but we don't live in a vacuum, George.
Well, and they have a governor that likes to get rid of stuff like that because he's a Democrat in sheep's clothing.
Well, there was a lot in the state budget. We had the REINS Act in the state budget. We were property tax reforms in the state budget, policies that were pro-growth, pro-economic freedom, good conservative policies that were vetoed among 64 vetoes that were in the state budget by Governor DeWine. And so the executive has a major impact here. And I think, you need a good legislature, you need a good executive, and you need a strong grassroots presence to compel and embolden lawmakers to do the things.
And that is the opportunity we have in Ohio in 26. I think we have a real chance to make a difference. I mean, getting behind some of the, the federal Senate candidate with Houston, getting behind Vivek on the Republican governor side. I think there's some huge opportunities. And if the grassroots people can be, at the forefront of that, it means we have a say in what they do. And hopefully we got a way to, push that through. One last thing at the national level, I mentioned this at lunch before we did this. What are your feelings on the communist takeover of the Republican or the Democrat Party? There was a Freudian slip, but clearly Mondami in New York is not even hiding his, far left or far left tendencies with that, and those kinds of candidates are what the Democrats are posting. Clearly, Greg Landsman's in that kind of neighborhood. I mean, he's not overtly that way, but he certainly in his policies is. How do you look at that threat of America shifting to, communist China and North Korea?
Well, it's this ever-present conflict of visions, right? There's two different directions the country can go, and the Democrat Party for the last 15, 20, 30 years, right, has progressively moved further and further to the extreme left to where they're openly embracing. Bernie Sanders was the most communist socialist member of the Democrat Party.
And he was just a wacky old guy.
Right. You just kind of chuckle and say, that's how Vermont is, right? But you move from there. It's that Overton window, right?
Yeah.
They've begun to move it to the point where a city the size of New York, which has more population than many states in this country, has elected a communist or mayor. And so it's why we need to be vigilant. It's why we need to be involved at the grassroots level to be able to push back and share our positive vision for the future, which is freedom and liberty.
So I guess the message to everybody out there is, Trump getting elected was a major, major accomplishment, but we're not done because the other side is getting crazier and crazier by the minute. Let's talk about the opportunities here in Ohio. So one of the things AFP Ohio has is what's called the Buckeye Blueprint. We will publish that. You can link to it. I highly recommend going in and digging into it. So let's talk about that a little bit. Number one on your list there is tax reform.
Well, an economic opportunity for all Ohioans. We got something big done last year. Ohio is a flat tax state. We have the second lowest flat tax in the nation, the lowest in the Midwest. But you know who's beating us? The 10 or so states that have a 0% income tax, George.
And so Tennessee.
That's where we got to get to, right? And that's what getting to a flat tax, though, is a monumental step because it puts every taxpayer on the same floor. And if you talk about our friends to the left, they like to segment people by class, right?
Let's tax the rich.
Right. Well, we're all in the same boat together now. Anybody who's working in the state of Ohio is paying the same 2.75% flat tax rate. And together as Ohioans, we're going to work to get it to a 0% income tax rate. It may not happen next year, but within the next 5 to 10 years, we can be a 0% income tax state, the first in the Midwest, the 11th in the nation. If there's a state that can get it done, it's the Buckeye state.
The issue I have there is what happened 2 years ago was with the triennial, reevaluation of homes happening right at the peak of the housing. Here in Hamilton County, the average person went up between 30 and 100% on their value of their house, which means their taxes went up. So I view property tax as a bigger threat than income tax. What are your guys' position on how we go after certainly reducing, if not eliminating, the property tax?
Yeah, I think reducing and limiting the property tax is the right step. When we embarked on eliminating the personal income tax in the state, one of the biggest objections, and it's a valid, fair one, is where are you going to fill that revenue? And my argument is, well, you cut, slash, and burn, right? The world doesn't work that way. But what you've done and where we found success across the nation in the movement to cut income tax is slowly but surely ticking it down, working it over the years to the point where it's obliterated. That's why we've been successful at eliminating income tax. And I think the same could be said for property taxes. The bigger problem, George, is local government.
They're crazy. I mean, they're going nuts now. But, if you think back, the original, so I live in township. I've lived in townships for a long, long time. Townships, you used to think of, okay, the only thing they cared about was clearing the roads, police, and fire. Well, now we got all kinds of parks. We got adult centers. We've got all kinds of outreach. Here in Coleraine, they bought an abandoned Sears store, and they're going to remodel that. So, that's like $4 million down the drain for a piece of unused property that they think, now the township's in the commercial property business. So I think the entire focus, instead of on taxes, should be on spending. And I know that's part of the blueprint as well, is to how do we attack this problem of spending? And you had said earlier that, in Ohio, we tend to go up in spending 8 to 10% a year. And with Vivek, maybe we got a chance to, I say go negative, but you're just hoping we stay the same.
There's a couple of different ways you can go. You could take a look at this. It's all available online through the Legislative Services Commission for your viewers and listeners who want to kind of dig in.
Give me the link. I'll stick it up there.
Yeah, it's the Legislative Services Commission. I'll give you that. It's but over the last decade, usually what happens is this: the governor goes in, does their State of the State address, and says, "I want this amount of money for these amount of programs," right?
And that includes new stuff,
new spending. And the last several bienniums under Governor DeWine, it has been new stuff, new taxes, new spending. Fortunately, it's when the budget goes to the House for the last several years, Republicans have instantly dropped all the tax increases. The spending's another thing. What we'll find is the governor will ask for a big new number. The House will tack a few $100 million more. It's just a few $100 million more, George. On top of that, it'll go to the Senate where it'll get a haircut, and then it'll go into conference committee where it's signed somewhere in the middle. Either way, the taxpayers are losing, government's growing, and spending goes up. Something unique happened this last biennium, though, last summer.
So there is hope.
There is hope, where the governor had a big number of about $14.9 billion increase he wanted over the biennium in new spending. The House trimmed that by nearly half when they got it. First time in a decade that the House, the lower chamber, has actually delivered a budget that cuts what the governor's asking for. The Senate did what they always do, and they trimmed it even a little bit more. It went to conference committee, rose a little bit. But at the end of the day, instead of the budget growing by $14.9 billion, it only grew by $7 billion. That's still a lot, George. But what we've done, right?
I don't have that in my couch, Christian.
No.
That's for sure.
But what we've done, right, is we've seen that there is a legislature with a willingness to trim the spending. Now, let's take you 12 months from now. It's Governor Vivek Ramaswamy. He's given his first State of the State address, and when he goes into the General Assembly, he tells them, look, I want a budget that cuts spending. I want you to find taxes to cut. I want you to cut red tape, and we're going to get this state to be competitive and be the economic engine of the Midwest. We're starting from a different place than we have ever
Grow the
before.
pie, not grow the spending.
Right. Now you've got an executive using the bully pulpit, right? Challenging the legislative branch not to find new ways to spend money, but to find better ways to cut costs and deliver savings to the taxpayers who they serve. It's a change in philosophy, and it's something Ohio, it might sound fantastical to your listeners, right? But it's something we haven't had in Ohio, but is really a very real possibility only 12 months from now.
Well, and that's the benefit of having someone whose entire background is not in politics. I mean, you look at Kasich, you look at DeWine, those guys have never had a real job.
Right.
Vivek has grown companies. He did biotech, for crying out loud. The guy's a genius to start with. I mean, we've got a chance to have someone who truly understands how to sign the front of a check and understands what a balance sheet looks like. And I think we need to push Vivek to say, listen, I don't want you to cut a little. I want you to take us back to pre-COVID spending.
Sure.
And I think it's a possibility.
Well, and that's part of the problem too, right? A lot of people have, I don't think a lot of people have paid attention to this, but we're budgeting off of inflated budgets from COVID, right? Billions of dollars in federal monies, one-time supposed monies have flown in. We never have retracted that budget back to 2019 pre-COVID levels. It has a big impact on us. I'll also point this out. You don't get the free state of Florida without Ron DeSantis, right? The executive has a major role to play in setting a vision for the state. And I think that's the thing. We've got a good legislature. We've got a conservative base of voters with a hardworking ethos. What we haven't had and been hungry for, I think, that would really unleash our state with the bigger, bolder ideas, is if we had an executive who was going to drive those forward.
Well, and that's the thing I think we need to make sure Vivek hears from us, is that, hey, we're a state of, blue collar workers for the most part. I mean, that's where my family roots were. And we didn't ever expect to get anything from anybody. So you had to earn it. And if you didn't have the money, you didn't spend the money. And I think that mindset is extremely beneficial, especially when you apply it to the ideas of, we want to grow the business culture here in Ohio. One of the other things you have in the Buckeye blueprint is energy. And you certainly can't build business in Ohio without building energy. So what is your focus on the energy? Is it a all of the above kind of a thing?
Yeah, well, we actually released a report about a year ago to this day where alongside the Buckeye Institute called A Better Energy Policy for Ohio. It's a simple document, about 25 pages. It's available on our website, buckeyeblueprint.com, that lays out a vision and set of principles for what we need to do. At the heart of it, it's about abundance, George. It's about looking at this not from a scarcity perspective, but from an abundance perspective. If we need more energy on the grid, we're going to build more energy generation, right? It's that kind of stuff that's going to, I think, unleash opportunity. The other part I think you want to look at with this, right, is this, and we're seeing the country shift in its mindset. For years, it was all about renewables.
Yeah.
Renewables. I think what we're finding from our lawmakers and citizens and policy thought leaders is reliables. We need more reliables, less renewables, because at the end of the day, when you turn your light switch on, or you're powering up your factory, you want to know that those electrons are there. And that only happens through reliable forms of energy.
Right. And most of the green tech is kind of silly. I have solar, and it pays for itself when the sun's out. Last 3 months, wow, we didn't even come close. And it's totally unreliable. So, I mean, it's great for when you've got peak air conditioning usage in the summer, but during the winter, it's kind of useless. Wind turbines never make sense because you never get back the energy you put into building the thing in the first place. So getting to something that is sustainable, reliable makes a ton of sense. And in Ohio, we've got tons of coal. We have tons of natural gas. Why aren't we using them? I mean, zero transportation costs for all intents and purposes. We know how to make it clean. You know, the idea that we can't sell coal in the United States and we ship it to China, well, they're going to make some really bad stuff when they burn it there versus what we do here. So all of the above makes a ton of sense. Are we seeing any response from the current legislature on enabling this by getting rid of the regulations and by opening up competition?
Actually, one of the big first accomplishments last year, back in April, a bill was signed into law, House Bill 15. And what that did is it really got to the heart of the permitting and regulations that were stymieing, tightening the ability to get energy abundance to happen here in the Buckeye State. So things like putting a shot clock on the regulators, the power siting board having to move quickly and have to give answers, right? That's part of the problem, I think, if you talk to folks in the energy sector, is will you get an answer? Is it going into the black hole of bureaucracy? Or are you going to get an answer, right? Like, am I going to put my project here or am I going to put it in Pennsylvania? I'll know in 90 days now, right, or less, whether that's going to happen, along with a handful of other regulatory reforms that, again, streamlined, drove that process forward. It's two-sided equation, though. The state and the federal government have a role to play here. The onus is really on the federal government now. The Trump administration made this only among the hundreds of executive orders that Trump signed, if you remember those early days. One of them was addressing these issues, and his team's working to get that resolved. But this ship doesn't turn around overnight. It's going to take continual due diligence and vigilance by our senators, our congressmen, and advocates in the White House to make that happen. The problems on the federal level, I think, especially with things like SMRs, nuclear reactors, the kinds of stuff that'll, with a low footprint, deliver big energy. We'll see where we go from there, but there's a lot of champions of this stuff in the.
So let's talk about the big elephant in the room, and that is the AI data centers. Ohio was trying to court a bunch of the data centers. We did some quick research here and discovered that, you know, the average increase in residential electric rates is 300% when an AI data center moves into your neighborhood. Your water rates go up the same amount, another 300%, because the AI facilities are just sucking in all the energy and all the water. Is there any outlook now to say, hey, you know, we want those data centers, but you're not going to do it on the back of the residential customers? I think you termed it behind the meter power. Is that part of what's going into the, you know, to the policies that you're promoting?
Well, I think that's part of the solution, right? Those folks are incentivized, the Amazon, Google, Meta folks of the world, right? They're incentivized to make sure that there is cheap, affordable, abundant energy on the grid to be able to power these data centers, which aren't just to benefit them. The listeners who are watching this right now, it's thanks to an AWS data center that they're probably getting this.
Well, and it's thanks to, you know, tons of AI that we are now using to process the podcast. I mean, to improve the sound and create the cuts. It's amazing what it can do. It takes a ton of power. Somebody's got to be doing it. And Ohio has a lot of natural resources that could be used for that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the reason we're in the pinch we're feeling right now is because for the last 2 decades, we've taken this renewable energies approach, right? Like there's a scarcity of electrons in the marketplace. rather than the abundance approach. And so if there's anything to learn from the last 20, 30 years is we need to take an abundance approach because we don't know what the future is going to hold, what technology is going to bring. And one other point on data centers, I'll say this, from a national security perspective, I would rather those be here in the United States, holding our data, holding my personal information, than in some foreign country that could either be an adversary or be taken over by or influenced by an adversary in the future.
Right. I mean, AI is a huge category. I'm sure we'll be doing more talking about that in the future. But the last thing that we were talking about in the Buckeye Blueprint is education, and that's near and dear here in Southwest Ohio. There's a lot of private parochial schools. They're all benefiting from, what happened with the backpack bill. We've got that lawsuit that's going forward, trying to undo all of this progress. What is your objectives in the education area?
Well, we continue to be strong champions for education opportunity. We believe families, parents know best how to educate their child and what kind of educational environment their child's going to thrive in. And so while we have a robust Ed Choice voucher program here in the Buckeye State, there are still a group of citizens who use non-charter, non-public schools that aren't able to avail themselves of those scholarship programs. We need to fix that. We also need to just overall rethink the way we're delivering education. We spend a lot of time debating about the money and not enough time discussing about the actual outcomes we're getting.
That's the whole disconnect there. So I was just going to say, in this neighborhood here, you can go to the Coleraine schools, but the Northwest School District is at best a 1.5-star school. Or you can go to the parochial schools, pay all your taxes to the Northwest, but then in addition pay for, the local school, but your outcomes are orders of magnitude better. I mean, basically you're sending your kids to a prison daycare system if you go to the public schools versus a learning environment if you go to the private ones. That ability to have competition and the best product wins is totally missing currently from the public school systems.
Yeah, and we spend a lot of money educating a child. I will go back to the money because that's where it all ends up going in a lot of ways because it's funded with our taxpayer dollars. I work, pay taxes.
Yep.
To fund that, I want a good return on investment. I can spend $8,900. The state spends $8,900 to send a child through an Ed Choice voucher to a high school. We will spend $12,000, $15,000, $25,000 in a failing public school district, right, for that same kid. It just the math doesn't add up and we're not getting better outcomes. More dollars doesn't equal better outcomes.
Almost always more dollars means worse outcomes. Because it's interesting, only in government can you be bad at your job and get more money because obviously you're bad, so you need more money to fix it. And that's been going on for decades. And you can see it in the numbers. I think if you look at the numbers of, how many teachers are in the school versus how many administrators, the disconnect is enormous.
And growing.
The administrators are growing at 10x the rate of teachers.
Well, and this goes back to the initial topic of property taxes, right? We have a big government problem here in the state, and it's not necessarily in Columbus. It's actually across the state. 5,900 political subdivisions in the state of Ohio.
Wow.
The fifth most in the nation. Fifth most political subdivisions in the nation. That's not small local government. That's big government in a different form and function, right? And the school districts, when you look at them, Richland County, where I live, I think it's 8 school districts that we have in the county, maybe some overlap, but that's 8 administrators making $150,000 a year. That's 8 deputy administrators making $125,000 a year. That's 8 treasurers making $120,000 a year. 8 deputy treasurers. I could go on, George. The point I hope you see here, right, is we've got a lot in overhead that because of this archaic idea that the Warriors and the Minutemen aren't going to play at the same football field and we like our mascots and our local control, we pay a premium for that, though.
Big time. It's like the opposite of the economy of scale you normally get when you have a bigger organization. And in addition, you're seeing that, having all of these different ways of doing it, but they're not really competing with each other. I mean, so a bad school has no incentive to become a good school, other than it might help them pass the next tax levy. They don't even look at it as improving it for the children.
Well, it's like anything in government, right? The profit, there is no profit motive in government. There is no incentive to deliver better services in government. It's what we find, right? It may start that way, but like any government program, right? Bureaucracy, entrenchment, just government malaise, right? Because there is nothing that exists in the private sector that drives innovation, drives improvement.
Right.
drives entrepreneurship. And even those who go there to be innovative and entrepreneurial and bring that better service, they quickly get pushed out because the bureaucracy is such a behemoth to fight against.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing when COVID hit and people actually were watching what their students were being taught and were shocked by how crazy some of it was. So we had the shock of what was in the curriculum, followed by the shock of how little education they really get in an 8-hour day or 6-hour day. Homeschooling has exploded. It's extremely successful. I think in the same way we talk about energy being an all of the above approach, I think education needs to be the same way. I remember that one of the conversations we had with the administrator for Northwest, he was saying, hey, if we allow vouchers, all of the good students are going to leave. And my answer was, okay, so become the expert at educating the not so good students. I mean, we need that niche as well. Someone to help teach vocational stuff, or, people that have dyslexia or other education problems. Maybe that's what your expertise becomes, and let the private schools take over, the excellence and the edge cases for the ones that are looking, for very specific, like STEM education or something. I mean, the whole idea is in in the business world, you get diversity through the fact that everybody tailors their product to a specific audience. We don't see that in the public world, in the the government world. And maybe that's the answer. I mean, maybe that's the way to get it. I know you guys had talked about having the parents get essentially like the backpack. You get X dollars to spend for your kids' education no matter where they go. Is that still a viable thing, or have they shut that down?
I think it's viable, but I think what we begin to recognize is, again, a lot of this is unlocked through an executive, right, who's going to put that charge forward and say, this is a priority for the state and my administration, and I want to drive that forward. So I think that's an opportunity in the coming years. In fact, though, Senator Andy Brenner, a state senator from Delaware County, has a bill that rethinks the funding of education, would actually eliminate local property tax levies for school districts. Now, we're not getting rid of all the taxes. It would centralize it into Columbus, and that's sometimes a dirty word, but the idea here is we're going to kill two birds with one stone. One, eliminate the disparity in property taxes that exist across the state, across 600 plus school districts, and solve the other problem, money following the child. If the argument's taken away from our friends in the public school unions, where this is our money, your tax dollars are mine, they belong here, we take that argument from them and we say, no, that money goes to Columbus, and then it follows the child. Now we're funding the students, not the systems. And so there are some innovative ideas that are being workshopped. Sometimes you put these bills out there, right, to air them out, to vet the ideas. Andy Brenner's Senate Bill 93, I believe, is one of those ideas that I think it's big, it's transformational. It might be hard to get done immediately, but it's one of those ideas that I think, George, if you have an administration that's open to it and the right folks driving it forward, big, bold, transformational things could happen.
Interesting. The one thing that I have a allergic reaction to is centralizing in Columbus. I think I trust Jeffrey Dahmer more than I do Columbus. And that's not an exaggeration. So overall, what do you feel the outlook is? What are the main things we should be doing as a grassroots organization to try and, help push some of these ideas?
Yeah. Well, one more thing on Columbus too. It deserves a lot of waving fists at them, right? But when was the last time your local municipality cut their income tax?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
When was the last time your county commissioners, right, cut your property taxes, cut a sales tax? Meanwhile, in Columbus, right, we've gone from 9 tax brackets with the top marginal rate over, 8 or 9%, to a flat tax of 2.75% because we're sending the right folks to Columbus. They're not perfect. They don't do it as fast as maybe we'd like it to happen, right? But they're moving in the right direction in terms of curbing spending, cutting taxes, more to be done there. But when you think,
I haven't seen any local go down ever,
and that's part of the challenge, right? So we've got to balance some of this stuff out. But in terms of helping out this year and into next, I mean, the reason we get involved and endorse candidates and races at Americans for Prosperity is not because we like politics and we do it for politics' sake. We do it because we've identified individuals, oftentimes members of our grassroots communities, who've raised their hand to step up and be involved, who say, I want to make a difference. I want to run for that office. And we do that because when they get elected, we believe they're going to be best positioned to help advance those big, bold, transformational reforms that you and I are just talking about.
Excellent. Any final words? Any hints at what we should be doing next, or where can we have the most optimism?
Well, one of the biggest challenges I've seen over the years of being involved in grassroots politics is a lot of folks, they go out and they vote in November on election day and they say, well, The president's got it. The senators got it. I did my part. I can sit back and just see what happens. Grassroots, people being involved at a grassroots level, spending an hour and a half going and knocking your neighbors' doors and talking to them about the election, joining us at a rally to wave a sign and have your voice heard, sharing good information on social media to help educate people what's going on. That all adds up and matters. And that's what we do at AFP. We put a megaphone to the voices of Ohioans who want to make a difference. So if you want to join us, or you haven't joined us yet, go to buckeyeblueprint.com. You can learn about the issues and values we stand for, learn about some of our team, and there's some ways to take action and connect with us.
Well, and I want to thank you for sure for your sponsorship of what we do here at Restore Liberty. There's a lot of stuff we do that is made possible by your organization. To learn more, go to restoreliberty.us, or you can reach us by phone, 513-400-5832. We welcome, this year we really need to get some more comments. We're trying to increase our social media presence. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. You can reach us at info@restoreliberty.us. Donovan, thank you so much for being here, and we really appreciate all your help.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me as always, George.